الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. We can do better than this. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. It appears from the numbers that we have already secured Akhirah and we have already secured the destiny. Everything is done and we can now seal the month of Ramadan and say goodbye and go home. But at least while you are here, one loud salawat. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His mercy and for guiding us to the right path. We also convey our message to the Holy Prophet of Islam and his pure progenies and selected disciples. Samahat al-Shaykh, friends, colleagues, sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم تصدقوا على فقرائكم ومساكينكم ووقروا كباركم وارحموا صغاركم. Give charity to the poor and the needy, honor your elders, and have compassion on the younger one. This is part of the sermon of Sha'baniyah, just a section of it, which I want to focus upon it tonight. But before I do that, I will follow the pattern that I've had by going over at least some of the major points, recap of the major points that I have covered during last night's lecture. Last night, or yesterday, because it was Yawm al-Quds al-Alami, the day of Quds, in which the plight of Palestinians are remembered, I alluded to the historical fact that in 1979, in a message called upon all the Muslims, not just the Muslims, all the oppressed around the world, to commemorate this as on the last Friday of Ramadan and make it a day to remember not only the plight of Palestinians, but also use it as a symbol on a grander scale, which was the relationship between the oppressed and the oppressor. He considered the plight of the Palestinians to be the tip of the iceberg of the much bigger crisis that we have to deal with. And I posed the question that why was it necessary for Marhum Imam to do this in 1979, although the plight of the Palestinians could be traced back to the late 19th century and particularly 20th century. Those of you who are familiar with the history of Palestine, at least from 1909, well, the Balfour Agreement, or it was the colonial agreement that they're going to divide the land, the Ottoman land, into pieces and create some kind of a place for the Zionist movement to have a place to settle down. The crisis for the Palestinians started from then. It wasn't something waiting to 1979. And by the way, what happened in 1930s and 40s and 20s in Palestine are happening now in Iraq, in which prime lands are being purchased by phantom organizations that nobody knows who they are, and primarily around the area where the Jewish community used to live in the past. If you go now to Del Kefr, or Chifr as the way we used to say it, all the cultivated land around the area has been purchased. When you speak to the previous landowners, okay, who purchased this? We don't know. Somebody, lawyer from somewhere, came in and paid a huge amount of money, and we saw. They are moving in gradually and in a very discreet manner, which was exactly what happened in Palestine during 1920s and 1930s. The landowners simply sold the land for the highest bidder. Before they knew it, by 1947, from 2% of the land in 1910 to nearly 40% of the land in 1947. So the same thing is happening in Iraq, which is the consequence of the colonialism. So, going back to the essence, why was it necessary for the Imam to do that? I alluded to at least three major reasons. Number one, the nature of the Islamic revolution in Iran. Islamic revolution in Iran was a revolution that inherently stood up against the international order and rejected it. And naturally, all the order that pushed the Palestinians out of their land and occupied their land had to be rejected. Immediately, those of you who remember the story or have read about it, the Zionist representative were kicked out of Iran, and the building was turned into the first Palestinian embassy in Iran during that period. And the Imam asked Muslims around the world to commemorate this, not only as a unique event to remember the Palestinian issue, but also as a much more grand scale, the oppression. Another factor was that Imam realized what we have today in our world is the consequence of what we call the colonial mentality, that not only had removed the land and the wealth and looted the land, as we saw again in Iraq and in other parts, Syria and somewhere else, but it was the crisis of identity that colonialism created in the Middle East. That we really, Muslims in general and Shias in particular, lost their direction. It was the Islamic revolution that gave it the direction that it needed. And I also, to make the whole conversation short, alluded to 2 points. That we cannot liberate Palestine until we reclaim the countries that are located around Palestine, that by the colonial power has been created to support what we call the Zionist project in the Middle East. These are something that we can discuss later. Tonight, I want to move away from this topic and go back to the Khutbah Sha'baniyah and talk about a point that I raised many weeks ago. In Islam, humans are considered to be similar to a number of other political theories as what we call social animals. Humans have to survive, to work, to develop in a social structure. They cannot do that in isolation. One of the reasons why Quran rejects Ruhbaniyya and Islam rejects going in a corner as a monk and living separate from the rest of the society is this particular issue, that you cannot evolve outside the social structure, that you have fellow human beings living in it, and you have to discharge your responsibility toward it. The month of Ramadan, if you look at the Khutbah Sha'baniyah, the month of Ramadan clearly emphasizes the spiritual development that has to happen, because otherwise, without the spiritual development, taqwa does not mean anything. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Or those who profess allegiance to faith or they claim to be faithful, fasting has been obligated on you as it has been obligated on nations before you. Those who have been attending the lecture, or they were attending the lecture at the Islamic Institute of Knowledge, I actually used the first 6 or 7 nights by literally deconstructing the verse, trying to see what Quran claims is correct or not. And it easily can be proven that the previous nations before us did have something as a concept of fasting. It may not have been similar to the one we have, but they certainly did. So taqwa is supposed to be a way of life in which God becomes the center of this way of life. And you cannot fulfill that responsibility in isolation if you only try to spiritually develop yourself and internally cleanse your own life without your social responsibility towards others within the society that you live in. This sermon of Sha'baniyah refers to this dual responsibility, that the inner search, the spiritual development, the spiritual enlightenment cannot happen by itself in total isolation and a detachment from your responsibility from fellow human being outside. Because the time is late, I'm going to recite few hadith that clearly emphasizes this relationship. Number one, the khutbah Sha'baniyah itself, tasaddaqu ala fuqara. Give ilm and charity to the poor and the needy. Wa masakina. And then وَوَقَّرُوا كِبَارَكُمْ. Have dignity and respect and honor for the elders. Unfortunately, the byproduct of this material life is that the elders are left in isolation in some corners, and we go and visit them once a year during Christmas or some Eid, as if they did not have a function in our lives at all. وَوَقَّرُوا كِبَارَكُمْ وَارْحَمُوا صِغَارَكُمْ. And have mercy and compassion for the younger, for the youth. Then comes another hadith regarding the orphans. تَحَنَّنُوا عَلَىٰ أَيْتَامِ النَّاسِ يُتَحَنَّنْ عَلَىٰ أَيْتَامِهِمْ. Always have compassion and mercy on the orphans of others, because the day will come when your orphans somebody has to pay attention to and have mercy on them. There is this direct relationship. مَنْ فَطَّرَ مِنْكُمْ صَائِمًا. This is again part of the social responsibility. Those who come and they are fasting, if you give them something to break, iftar, don't send them out. Say this is a private function and you cannot eat here. No. Let them eat. من فطر مسلما ومن فطر منكم صائما مؤمنا في هذا الشهر كان بذلك عند الله عتق ونسمة ومغفرة لما مضى من ذنوبه. If you provide iftar for someone who is a believer and he or she is fasting, it's like you have released a number of slaves to be free, and a kafara or a compensation for your sins during your life. Within our social responsibility, there are other hadith that says to associate and visit each other frequently. There is a tendency in the society that you are the king of your own household. You close the door and you don't want to associate with anybody else. The hadith says far from it. If you are the followers of Ahlul Bayt, you have to interact. It's only through this kind of interaction that you become familiar with the crisis, with the plights of other families within your own society. So, أَبْلَغْ مَوَالِينَ السَّلَامِ. This is a hadith from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. Convey our salam to those who are going to follow us later on, and inform them that they should begin visiting each other on a regular basis. to use these visitation to learn from it by reciting a hadith or discussion of whatever it is that you learn from them. And tell the rich to be watchful of the poor and the needy. And tell the powerful so that they would pay attention to the weak within their community. To remind us that ultimately this life is going to come to an end, and all those who are within the community, they should go and watch how deceased individuals are being buried, the burial sites. Because once you visit these sites, you remember that this is where ultimately all of us will end up. وَأَنْ يَتَلَاقُوا فِي بِيُوتِهِمْ. There is another hadith that says the most blessed house is the house that a lot of people keep coming in and out. It's not isolated. People visit it on a regular basis. أَنْ تَتَلَاقُوا فِي بِيُوتِهِمْ أو أَنْ يَتَلَاقُوا فِي بِيُوتِهِمْ, that they meet in their own houses, but for the purpose of enlightening each other, rather than just sit in front of the TV and watch TV, no, or have coffee or tea or cookies, no. This is a place where people should visit each other to learn from each other in these households. Because it's through this interaction that you will be able to find why is it so important about the Friday prayer that we should participate. Because it's a public prayer that when you participate, you meet your fellow human being and you learn their crisis, and you will do whatever you can to deal with them. For those of us who feel that it is below us to deal with the poor and the need, there is, I recite this hadith and I end it here, inshallah, tomorrow night I'll follow it. مَنْ لَقَى فَقِيرًا مُسْلِمًا فَسَلَّمَ عَلَيْهِ خِلَافَ سَلَامِهِ عَلَى الْغَنِيِّ. If you see a poor individual and you greet this individual because he or she is poor in a different manner that you greet a rich person, that just greeting itself becomes problematic, let alone sitting at the table and turning your back to the poor and the needy because they don't deserve your greeting and you are much higher than them. فَسَلَّمَ عَلَيْهِ خِلَافَ سَلَامِهِ عَلَى الْغَنِيِّ لَقَى اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَهُوَ عَلَيْهِ غَضْبَانٌ. This person is going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed, simply because you have not greeted the poor individual the way you should have greeted. Let's, it's already past 9 o'clock or the beginning of the function coming in. I will recite, let's recite Surah Al-Fatiha, and inshallah tomorrow night we'll continue with this. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين